Welcome to your personalized deep dive. Today, we're diving into a recent study on European life expectancy trends. It was published in the Lancet Public Health Journal just last month on February 18th, 2025. The study really dives deep into why life expectancy improvements have been slowing down across Europe. And get this, it started around 2011, well before the COVID-19 pandemic.
Interesting, right?
Very. We'll be focusing on 20 European countries for our analysis today. These are the 16 founding members of the European Economic Area, plus the 4 nations of the UK. So, to kick things off, can you give us a quick rundown of the overall life expectancy trends observed in the study?
Sure. Before 2011, life expectancy was steadily increasing in all 20 of the European countries we're looking at. Then, around 2011, there was a statistically significant change. The rate of improvement slowed down considerably.
So life expectancy was still improving after 2011, just not as quickly as before.
Exactly. Between 2011 and 2019, all the countries continued to see improvements in life expectancy. It just wasn't at the same pace as the previous 2 decades. From 1990 to 2011, things were moving much faster.
Were there any exceptions to this trend? Any countries that bucked the slowdown?
Actually, yes. Norway was the only country where the rate of life expectancy improvement actually increased after 2011. Every other country saw a decrease in the rate of improvement.
Interesting. Are there any countries that stand out in terms of the most and least significant decreases in the rate of improvement?
England had the most significant decrease, while Iceland experienced the smallest.
So we've established that there was a significant slowdown in life expectancy improvement across most of Europe after 2011. What factors were driving the consistent improvements before 2011?
The main drivers of that improvement from 1990 to 2011 were the reductions in deaths from 2 major causes: cardiovascular diseases and neoplasms, or cancers, as they're more commonly known.
If those were the primary drivers before 2011, what changed afterwards to cause the slowdown?
Well, the slowdown in reducing deaths from cardiovascular diseases seems to be the main culprit behind the slowing life expectancy improvements after 2011.
Really? Across the board?
For the most part, yes. This was observed in all of the countries we're analyzing except for Greece.
What about the progress in reducing deaths from neoplasms? Did that change as well?
There's a bit more variation there. Some countries like Norway, Denmark, and Belgium continued to see pretty large decreases in deaths from neoplasms.
Which led to?
Larger gains in life expectancy, of course.
Right.
However, other countries such as England, Wales, and Finland saw much smaller gains in life expectancy. Some even experienced a slight increase in mortality.
So it seems like the progress in reducing deaths from neoplasms wasn't as consistent across the board as the slowdown in reducing deaths from cardiovascular diseases. Now, we can't talk about life expectancy trends without addressing the elephant in the room, the COVID-19 pandemic. Obviously, it had a huge impact on global health, but how did it specifically affect life expectancy in these European countries?
It's not surprising, but the pandemic did lead to an overall decrease in life expectancy.
Across all the countries?
Across nearly all of them, yes. This decrease was observed between 2019 and 2021, but there were a few exceptions, like Ireland, Iceland, Sweden, Norway, and Denmark.
So some countries managed to avoid a decrease in life expectancy even during a global pandemic. How is that possible?
It's pretty interesting, actually. These countries, the ones that either maintained marginal improvements or saw no change in life expectancy during the pandemic, are the same ones that continued to make progress in reducing mortality from cardiovascular diseases and neoplasms before the pandemic hit.
You don't think that's just a coincidence, do you?
I don't. It suggests a possible link between their pre-pandemic progress in reducing mortality and their preparedness for the pandemic. Perhaps those countries were simply better equipped to handle the challenges posed by COVID-19.
That makes sense. And what about the countries that were hit hardest by the pandemic? Did they have anything in common in terms of their pre-pandemic life expectancy trends?
Actually, yes. The countries like Greece and the UK that experienced the most significant slowdown in life expectancy improvement before the pandemic were also hit the hardest by COVID-19. They saw the largest decreases in life expectancy.
So it seems like the countries that were already struggling with slowing life expectancy improvement before the pandemic were more vulnerable to the negative impacts of COVID-19. This raises some questions about the underlying risk factors that are contributing to these mortality trends. What insights does the study provide about the risk factors associated with cardiovascular diseases and neoplasm?
Study names high systolic blood pressure, dietary risks, and high LDL cholesterol as the top 3 contributors to deaths from cardiovascular diseases in 2019.
And for neoplasms?
Tobacco smoke, dietary risks, and occupational risks were the leading culprits in 2019.
Are there any overall trends in risk factor exposure that stood out to you?
There are a couple of concerning trends the study points out. Firstly, exposure to high BMI has been increasing.
Meaning more and more people are becoming overweight or obese.
Exactly, and this trend has been consistent across all the countries in the study from 1990 to 2021. In contrast, exposure to tobacco smoke has been decreasing steadily across all countries during the same period.
That's good news at least.
It is, although tobacco smoke is still a significant risk factor, particularly for neoplasms. Another worrisome trend is the slowdown or even reversal of reductions in exposure to high LDL cholesterol and high systolic blood pressure.
When did that start happening?
Around 2011, which, as we've discussed, is when the slowdown in life expectancy improvement began. And then there are the risk factors that have remained stubbornly high or even increased slightly over the past 3 decades. Exposure to dietary risks, high alcohol use, and low physical activity.
So, despite all the advancements in healthcare and public health, we're still struggling with many of the same risk factors that have been plaguing us for decades. Given these trends and risk factors, what potential explanations does the study offer for this overall slowdown in life expectancy improvement across Europe?
Well, the study really digs into the complex interplay of factors that are contributing to these trends. It examines the roles of healthcare systems, access to treatment, individual behaviors, and, importantly, the role of government policies in mitigating risk factors and improving overall population health.
Speaking of government policies, does the study address the longevity ceiling theory at all? The idea that there's a biological limit to how long humans can live and that we're approaching that limit.
It does, and it actually dismisses that theory outright.
Oh, interesting.
The study suggests that there's still potential for reducing mortality below the age of 100.
So we haven't hit our peak yet.
Not even close, according to the study. The focus should be on understanding and addressing the factors affecting mortality within the current human lifespan, rather than assuming we've reached some kind of biological limit.
That's a hopeful perspective. I'm curious to hear more about the role of government policies. Are there any specific examples of successful policy interventions highlighted in the study?
There are actually. Norway's success with long-standing fiscal interventions to reduce sugar consumption and promote healthier diets is a key example.
How have those interventions worked?
Well, Norway has implemented taxes on sugary drinks and food, as well as subsidies for healthier options. They've also invested heavily in public education campaigns to raise awareness about the risks of excessive sugar consumption, and it's been pretty successful.
And how does that contrast with other countries' approaches to tackling this issue?
Many other countries have relied more on voluntary approaches, encouraging food manufacturers to reduce sugar content and promoting healthier choices through public awareness campaigns.
But those haven't been as effective.
Not as effective as Norway's more forceful fiscal interventions, according to the study.
It seems like sometimes you need a bit of a push, even if it comes in the form of taxes and regulations, to really make a difference in public health. What about physical activity? Does the study have anything to say about the role of government policies in promoting physical activity?
It does. The study emphasizes the importance of coordinated strategies to improve physical activity levels across the population. It specifically cites findings from large observational studies that have consistently shown a significant reduction in premature mortality and chronic health conditions associated with regular physical activity.
So getting people moving more can have a real impact on their health and longevity.
Absolutely. Regular physical activity has a wide range of health benefits, from improving cardiovascular health and reducing the risk of chronic diseases to boosting mental well-being and improving overall quality of life.
We've talked a lot about individual behaviors and government policies, but the study also mentions economic factors and socioeconomic inequalities. How do these factors fit into the overall picture of life expectancy trends in Europe?
The study acknowledges that economic factors and socioeconomic inequalities can have a significant impact on health outcomes.
In what ways?
Well, there's a clear link between poverty, poor diet, and increased exposure to various risk factors, for example.
People living in poverty often have limited access to healthy foods and safe environments for physical activity. They may also experience higher levels of stress and face greater barriers to accessing healthcare.
Exactly. And these factors can all contribute to poorer health outcomes and ultimately impact life expectancy. The study also briefly touches on the potential role of fiscal policies.
You mean government spending and taxation?
Yes, and the ongoing debate about the impact of austerity measures on health outcomes.
Austerity measures often involve cuts to public spending, including healthcare and social services. It's understandable that those cuts could have negative consequences for people's health, especially those who are already vulnerable.
Precisely. The study highlights the need for further research to fully understand the complex relationship between economic factors, socioeconomic inequalities, and life expectancy trends.
That's definitely an area that deserves more attention. There's one concept that I found particularly intriguing in the study, the idea of cohort effects. Could you explain what cohort effects are and why they're relevant to understanding life expectancy trends?
Sure, cohort effects refer to the long-term health outcomes of populations born around the same time and how those outcomes are shaped by shared life experiences. The study uses the example of deindustrialization and unemployment in Scotland during the 1980s.
A period of significant economic and social upheaval.
Exactly. The study suggests that this period of hardship may have led to increased exposure to various risk factors like smoking, alcohol abuse, and poor diet for the generation that came of age during that time.
And those increased exposures could then have long-term consequences for their health, potentially contributing to the slowdown in life expectancy improvement for that particular cohort.
Right. The study points to cohort effects as an important consideration when analyzing life expectancy trends, as they highlight how historical events and societal changes can have lasting impacts on the health of entire generations.
Fascinating. So we're not just looking at individuals and their choices, we're also looking at the broader context of their lives and the historical forces that have shaped their health trajectories. This study really underscores the complexity of life expectancy trends.
It does. It's not just about individual choices or access to healthcare. It's about the interplay of a wide range of factors, from economic conditions and social policies to historical events and cultural norms.
It's a reminder that improving population health and increasing life expectancy requires a holistic and multi-sectoral approach. We need to address not just the symptoms, but the root causes of these trends.
Absolutely. We need to think about how to create environments and societies that support healthy choices and promote well-being for everyone.
It's a big challenge, but it's one that we need to tackle head-on if we want to ensure a healthier future for ourselves and generations to come. We'll delve deeper into these solutions and explore what actions we can take, both individually and collectively, to reverse the slowdown in life expectancy improvement in our next segment.
This study really does provide such a comprehensive analysis of all the factors that are influencing life expectancy trends in Europe. The findings really highlight the need for a multifaceted approach. We can't just focus on one thing if we want to address the slowdown in life expectancy improvement.
It definitely seems like there's no silver bullet solution. The study emphasizes the role of individual behaviors and government policies in shaping these trends and suggests that reversing the slowdown requires coordinated action across different sectors, like healthcare, public health, government policy. It's a big task. But let's start small. What can we as individuals do to improve our health and contribute to reversing this trend?
Individual actions really do play a crucial role. We can focus on adopting healthier lifestyles, so eating a balanced diet, engaging in regular physical activity, avoiding smoking, and limiting alcohol consumption. All of these things can significantly impact our overall health and longevity.
Those are all things we've heard before, but they're worth repeating because they really do make a difference. It's easy to get overwhelmed by the big picture, but ultimately it comes down to the choices we make each day.
Absolutely. And don't underestimate the impact of these individual choices. They can influence the health of future generations too. Think about it. Establishing healthy habits and promoting a culture of well-being, it all starts with us.
That's a great point. We're not just responsible for our own health, we're setting an example for those around us, especially for younger generations. Now, the study also looks ahead and provides some potential future scenarios based on current trends. Can you elaborate on those?
Sure. The study highlights two potential scenarios. One is a continuation of this current slowdown in life expectancy improvement. And this scenario is likely if we don't effectively address these underlying risk factors, particularly the ones related to lifestyle and socioeconomic inequalities. The second scenario involves a widening of health inequalities. This would primarily be driven by socioeconomic factors if effective action is not taken. And the second scenario really emphasizes the need for policies that specifically address health disparities and improve access to healthcare. It's about making sure everyone has access to those healthy living resources, no matter what segment of society they belong to.
It's a reminder that health is not just an individual responsibility, it's also a matter of social justice. We need to create a society where everyone has the opportunity to live a long and healthy life. As we wrap up this deep dive into European life expectancy trends, what are the key takeaways you want our listeners to remember?
I think the most important takeaway is that life expectancy improvement in Europe has been slowing down. And this trend started before the COVID-19 pandemic. It's important to remember that because it means this is not just a temporary blip due to the pandemic. This is a long-term trend. It requires attention and action. Also, this slowdown is primarily driven by changes in mortality from cardiovascular diseases and neoplasms, both of which are linked to a number of modifiable risk factors. So there's a lot we can do to address this. Another key takeaway is that government policies play a significant role in shaping these trends. We talked about Norway's fiscal policies to reduce sugar consumption, and that's a great example of how proactive interventions can actually work. They can make a real difference. And finally, it's crucial to remember that the trends and challenges we've discussed here in this European study are not unique to Europe. Many countries around the world are facing similar issues with slowing life expectancy improvement and those rising rates of chronic diseases.
It's a global issue that requires global attention and collaboration. This deep dive has certainly given us a lot to think about. It's a complex issue. There are no easy solutions. But this study gives us a starting point. It helps us understand the trends, the causes, and the potential solutions. It also underscores the urgency of implementing those effective policies and interventions to improve population health, and not just in Europe, but globally. This deep dive has really highlighted how our individual choices, those societal factors, and the government policies all play a role in shaping these life expectancy trends. It's almost like a wake-up call, urging us to act. Individuals, communities, policymakers, we all need to work together if we want to address these challenges and create a healthier future for everyone.
Yeah, I agree. And the slowdown in life expectancy improvement, it's a multifaceted issue. It's complicated, and there are no quick fixes, that's for sure. We need to take a comprehensive approach, one that addresses both those individual behaviors and those systemic factors that we talked about.
It's a lot to unpack. As we conclude this deep dive, what is one thought you would like to leave our listeners with?
Well, I think it's important to remember that while the trends we've discussed do present a challenge, they also represent an opportunity. By understanding those factors that influence life expectancy and taking those proactive steps, we can create a future where longer, healthier lives are not just a possibility, but a reality. For generations to come, that's what we should be striving for.
That's a great point to end on. It's a reminder that we have the power to shape our own health and the health of future generations. This deep dive has given us a lot to think about, and I hope it inspires our listeners to take action, make those healthy choices, and advocate for policies that promote well-being for all. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into European life expectancy trends. We'll be back soon with another insightful exploration of the factors shaping our world.